Bassazi, who is the first female ambassador from Tunisia. Isn't that amazing? Next is just a man. I don't know what else. No, I'm playing. His Eminence Noel Diarra, who is the Mali ambassador. Sir, thank you very much. Thank you. Then back to another woman who is the first female ambassador for her nation. From Namibia is Margaret Mansa Williams. She's not here yet. That's okay. We'll escort her in when she is, but again, accomplished. Another woman, the first female ambassador for her nation, Rabina Kabarara Kakonge. Not here yet. Okay. And that's all right. No. They are accomplished for a reason, and that's why they are not here. And then from Zambia, His Eminence Chichamba F. Kanyama, who is our friend and our thank you, sir, for being here. You honor us very much. Very, very much. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the house that you are in. It is owned and operated by a group of people who simply want to serve, particularly the diplomatic community in this city, leadership community, people who have lived here for a long time, recognize the challenges, the loneliness, the disconnection that can sometimes happen, and so that's why we are here. The building that you're in was built in 1907. It's an example of Beaux-Arts for those of us who pay attention to architectural things, architecture, which is why you see the unusual styling. And you won't know the architect's name, probably George Oakley Totten Jr., but this man was actually the architect for it's a long list, get ready, the Turkish, the Polish, the Belgian, the Norwegian, the Spanish, the Swedish, the Danish, and the first French embassies in this city. Pretty amazing, pretty amazing. And also he oversaw the remodeling of the U.S. Capitol. By the way, all of us pay attention to economics in the work that we do. This building would have cost you in 1907 $25,000. So we paid a little bit more, actually, just a little bit more. I'd like to introduce to you now Brett Fuller, who is the chairman of the board of the organization here. It is his vision that produced not only our gathering, but this facility here. You may know him for a variety of things. You may know him for his religious leadership. You may know him as a scholar in African American studies, an author. He is the chaplain to the Washington Commanders. He is in leadership of a number of international organizations. And so would you please welcome our chairman, Brett Fuller. Let me do it. I would also like to welcome, notice how I recovered myself, our co-chair. I saw her hiding, so I thought I wasn't supposed to introduce her, but I'm going to introduce her now, whether she likes it or not. Cynthia Fuller is his wife. She's amazing. Please come. And I've been told by my African-American female friends not to mention black hair, but when she had a different hairstyle, she looked just like Michelle Obama. And I literally had someone come up to me and say once when we were just out, "Can I talk to her?" They thought I was the Secret Service. Okay, now I'll sit down.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm going to have my wife, my bride, bring a wonderful greeting.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. We're so happy you're here, and all our distinguished guests. We want to welcome you to the reading of Phyllis Wheatley's poems and to the House of 2230. You know, there are some times in life where inspiration does so much for us. It's like a good shot in the arm. And the stories that will be read today and the person herself, Phyllis Wheatley, is that type of experience that we're hoping that you would gain today. So enjoy yourself while you're here, and we just want you to know that we're happy you're here.
Thank you, dear. Appreciate it. Our goal in having this building is to connect people that normally would not find themselves in relationship. Friendship, commonalities, similar goals, allow people to accomplish much more than they ever could together much more than they ever could individually together. We also want to present cultural events that allow for people to be upgraded in their leadership and understand a little bit more about history, a little bit more about themselves maybe. And Phyllis Wheatley happens to occupy a very large part in my heart. I almost call her my sister. I've studied her so much. My mother, during Black History Month, she was an educator in Kansas City. My mother, as we were growing up, every February for Black History Month would have us read about all the significant players in American history. So we had an education beyond whatever the school was giving us. And we had to memorize every one of Phyllis Wheatley's poems, or we couldn't have breakfast. So she would a week before say, now remember, memorize these and come. And so we'd have to. And so Phyllis, who I didn't care about when I was 10, now I value so much what my mother did. So much so that a friend of mine named Mark Mitchell, who happens to be the largest collector of African American literature in the world, was a part of my congregation. And Mark and I kind of bantered about, welcome, we are glad to have you. Mark and I bantered about the possibility of him acquiring one of Phyllis Wheatley's original works. And Phyllis accomplished her effort of being the first person of African descent to ever be published in America in 1773. During that time, there were only 200 books published, 200. And I knew that would be a rare thing if somebody owned one. So I asked Mark, since you happen to be the person that has the largest collection of African American literature in the world, do you have a book? He said, I have 3. I said, oh. He said, I even have one that's signed. I said, dude, wow. I said, like, do you sell them? He said, yeah. I said, how much would that signed one be? He said, think mortgage. I said, never mind. He said, the other 2 are not signed and they go for much cheaper. I said, how much? He said, small luxury car. So my wife and I saved up our money. And after about 3 years, we bought one. And so afterwards, you can go see it. It's right over there. There were 200 printed in the first publication. There are only 109 left, and that's one. We as an organization at 2230 House for the Nations feel honored to be able to have a very cherished piece of American history, not just African American history, American history. This woman, Phyllis, was a phenomenal human being. Enslaved, brought from Africa at the age of 8 or 9 in 1753. When she got here, John and Susanna Wheatley purchased her, and they treated her much more like a daughter than an enslaved person. Taught her English, Greek, and Latin. By the age of 12, she had mastered all 3. I'm 62, I still have not mastered English. She was writing poems by the age of 14. And so good was she, so accomplished, that she tried to get published in her poetry. But the problem was nobody in America would do so. They didn't think an African American, and I'll say this different, there were no African Americans. You couldn't become an American until 1666 when they made black folk free and citizens. So she was a person of African descent, but nobody thought anybody of African descent could be smart enough to write poetry that white folk would read. And so nobody would publish her. She actually had to go to England, present before King George, and then find a publisher there and then come back and have her work then presented in America. After having done so, the white folks in America still didn't believe that a black person could be that smart. And so she literally had a literary inquisition of 18 people from Boston, men of renown in the city, that came and had her present before them all the stuff. Do you know English well enough? Are you literarily competent enough to put words together like this? And after about 2 hours, they said, yes, this woman wrote the work. She was all of 19 or 20 years of age. She was 20 when it was published, 19 when she wrote it, a teenager. And she was a phenomenal woman in that she was enslaved when she did it. And while she was enslaved, she talked about the injustice of slavery in the book. Courageous. And so she is one of my heroes, not only African in her orientation in that she was the first, but a woman on top of that. And her her sense of self and understanding how she was to orient herself toward her God and let the perspective of the spiritual influence her natural is astounding. Astounding. Now I realize there's some people who produce some controversy over some of the things she wrote, especially the poem where she talks about coming out of Africa to America as a slave. I get that. But how many 19-year-olds do you know that have it all together? I'm just glad she did something. 19-year-olds don't think all right. And most of the poems she wrote, I think was pretty good. I kind of like it. At the end, even though she says she implies it was a blessing that she came from Africa to America because she found her God. At the end, she says, all you slave folk need to repent. All you masters, you need to change your idea about what this is and this slaviness. Strength in her poetry that confronted the injustices of the world while incorporating her relationship with her maker. That was unusual for a person of African descent. This happens to be, the poem was published, book in 1773. This happens to be the 250th anniversary. And so that's why we are doing this, to commemorate her and to realize that civil rights didn't start in the 60s. 1773, somebody was figuring out how to make wrong right. So I hope you enjoy the readings today. And we've got a book for anybody who wants to contribute to our efforts here at 2230 A House for the Nations. And if you don't get one today, you can always buy one on Amazon. She is worth reading, worth digesting, worth memorizing, and worth emulating. Thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it.
Our first reader today is going to be Emil Wallace Waddell, who is the Community Relations Officer for the Embassy of Jamaica. He has an interesting background. I grew up in Berlin when the wall was up and during the Cold War, so I'm intrigued. Not only does he have a bachelor's degree in science from the University of Technology of Jamaica, but he has a master's degree from the People's Friendship University in Russia, and he taught English as a second language in Russia for several years. Have your credentials been checked, sir, by security? You'll have to forgive me today. I can't read everybody's resume. I'm intrigued that he's one of the visionaries and founders to launch Jamaica Fest at the OAS. And also he's one of the folks who has caused Jamaica for the first time to be part of the DC Passport Around the World Embassy Tour that I'm sure you're all familiar with. So please welcome Emil Wallace Waddell.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to our lovely hosts, Brett and Cynthia. It's a pleasure to be here again, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this event this morning. So I'll be reading the poem To a Lady on Her Coming to North America with Her Son for the Recovery of Her Health. All right. Indulgent muse, my groveling mind inspire, and fill my bosom with celestial fire. See from Jamaica's fervid shore she moves, like the fair mother of the blooming loves. When from above the goddess with her hand fans a soft breeze and lights upon the land, thus she on Neptune's watery realm reclined, appeared, and thus invites the lingering wind. Arise, ye winds, America explore, waft me, ye gales, from this malignant shore. The northern milder climes I long to greet, their hope and that health will my arrival meet. Soon as she spoke, in my ideal view, the winds assented, and the vessel flew. Madame, your spouse, bereft of wife and son, in the grove's dark recesses pours his moan, each branch wide-spreading to the ambient sky. Forgets its verdure and submits to die. From thence I turn and leave the sultry plain, and swift pursue thy massage o'er the main. The ship arrives before the favored wind, and makes the Philadelphian port assigned. Thence I attend you to Bostonia's arms, where generous friendship every bosom warms. Thrice welcome here, may health revive again, bloom on thy cheek and bound in every vein. Then back return to gladden every heart, and give your spouse his soul's far dearer part. Received again with what a sweet surprise, the tearing transport starting from his eyes. While his attendant son with blooming grace springs to his father's ever dear embrace. With shouts of joy, Jamaica's rocks resound. With shouts of joy, the country rings around. Thank you.
One of the women we very much enjoy involving in our events here is Lisa Matthews. You may know who Lisa is, a 20-plus year veteran of the Associated Press, where she served as U.S. planning editor. She's had a number of roles there. She's also was the 114th president of the National Press Club. Again, I can't read everyone's resume, but Lisa is among the accomplished women that we have in this room. She earned not one, but 2 Edward R. Murrow Awards, which is one of the highest journalism awards in this country. She's in Hall of Fame. She's a shero in media, as one organization called it. I just can't go on because the women are getting too much. Men, help me. Please welcome Lisa Matthews.
Good afternoon. Every time I hear an introduction like that, I'm thinking, who are they talking about? It's just amazing. So glad to have everyone here. I will be reading Hymn to the Morning. Attend my lays, ye ever-honored 9. Assist my labors, in my strains refine. In smoothest numbers pour the notes along, for bright Aurora now demands my song. Aurora, hail, and all the 1,000 dyes which deck thy progress through the vaulted skies. The morn awakes, and wide extends her rays. On every leaf the gentle zephyr plays. Harmonious lays the feathered race resume, dart the bright eye, and shake the painted plume. Ye shady graves, your verdant bloom display, to shield your poet from the burning day. Calliope, awake the sacred lyre, while thy fair sisters fan the pleasing fire. The bowers, the gales, the variegated skies, in all their pleasures in my bosom rise. See in the east the illustrious king of day. His rising radiance drives the shades away. But oh, I feel his fervid beams too strong, and scarce begin, concludes the abortive song.
Our next reader is Kimberly A. Bassett, who was appointed to serve as the Secretary of the District of Columbia by Mayor Muriel Bowser on December 11th, 2018. Lest you underestimate what that role includes, in her role as the secretary, she is the custodian of the seal of the District of Columbia, manages the city's ceremonial services, government document publishing and issuances, notary commissions and authentications, international and diplomatic activities, and public records and archive maintenance. It sounds like she does everything but pave the streets. Her resume is vast. She's a highly accomplished woman. She is addressing many wonderful social issues. I'm impressed by the fact that she's had an executive director role with the Wireless Foundation, worked with Verizon and others. She's helped develop some apps, one to help pregnant women get services, one to make children safe, an app called Be Seen. And listen to this. She also worked with 2 of the nation's most underachieving school districts, New Orleans and DC, to launch an app empowering parents to research their children's schooling options. How brilliant. There are paragraphs, and then we come to what has to be inserted here as a matter of humor. Because the first line of the last paragraph says, in her spare time. But I like that Yeah, that's clearly a joke. But I like that one of the things she does in her quote-unquote spare time is be on the board of Step Africa, a dance company. So she's a well-rounded person who's not just got her head in politics, but has probably got a little bit of groove. Let's welcome, please, Kimberly A. Bassett.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Hello, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thank you so much to the Fullers for having me here at the 2030 House for Nations. I've never been here. It's gorgeous. And I also like to thank my friend Jan Duplain. Here we go. I've read this poem. I was telling the Fullers when I was younger, before college and during college, I had a different mindset and I read it differently. And as a 50-year-old, I see so much more. And it's just amazing how you just grow and you learn about yourself through poetry and how your opinion of it changes. So here I go. 'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my belighted soul to understand that there is a God, that there is a Savior too, once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with a scornful eye, their color is a diabolical dye. Remember, Christian Negroes, black as Cain, may be refined and joined the angelic train. Thank you very much.
Our next reader is Allison Brown McKithen. And because apparently we haven't had enough prominent women in the room already, she is the executive director of the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. And vice president of international programs at Trade Center Management Associates, the exclusive manager of the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center, and a privately held, wholly owned subsidiary of Drew Company. Listen, she is the first African-American woman to hold this position. Again, stunning, stunning. I could go on and on. She is involved in Passport DC around the World Embassy Tours, has helped to organize that and lead that. She is involved in Winter National Embassy Showcase, developing programs for that. She is one of those people making a difference in the world. Please welcome Allison Brown McKithen.
So good to see so many friends here. Secretary Bassett, I must confess that I was about to read the same poem that Kimberly just read. I read that poem and won a prize when I was in 6th grade in school, reading that very poem. So you'll have to forgive me because now I'm going to read something different that I was not prepared to do. So bear with me. Hymn to the evening. Soon as the sun forsook the eastern main, the pealing thunder shook the heavenly plain. Majestic grandeur from the zephyr's wing exhales the incense from the blooming spring. Soft pearl the streams, the birds renew their notes, and through the air their mingled music floats. Through all the heavens, what beauteous dyes are spread, the west glories in the deepest red. So may our breasts with every virtue glow, the living temples of our God below. From thence I turn and leave the sultry plain, and swift pursue thy passage over the main. The ship arrives before the favoring wind, and makes the Philadelphian port assigned. Thus I attend to you, Bostonia's arms, when glorious friendship every bosom warms. Thrice welcome here, and may health revive again, bloom on thy cheek, and bound in every rain. And back return the gladden every heart, and give your spouse his soul's far dearer part, received again with a sweet surprise, the tear in transport starting from his eyes. while his attended son with blooming grace springs to his father's ever dear embrace. With shouts of Jamaica's rocks resound, with shouts of joy the country rings about. Thank you.
Our next reader is Her Excellency Haneen Hajouri Basazi, who was appointed Tunisia's ambassador to the U.S. in October 2021. She's a career diplomat who earned a master's degree in law in 1995. She served in Germany from 98 to 2000, then became the head of the division managing Tunisia's ties to the European Union from 2000 to 2005. From 2005 to 2010, she was the deputy chief of mission at the Tunisian embassy in Portugal. And I don't mean to make light, it goes on and on and on. You can tell the caliber of people we have here, and this woman is making a difference in the world. Please welcome Her Excellency Haneen Hajouri Basazi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me tell you that I'm very honored to be with you today. And as an African woman, I'm very proud to be involved in an exceptional event, which is celebrating an exceptional African American lady. And let me tell you that English is my third language. So I'm reading the poem in Virtue. O thou bright jewel, in my aim I strive to comprehend thee. Thine own words declare, wisdom is higher than a fool can reach. I cease to wonder and no more attempt thine height to explore, or fathom thy profound. But, O my soul, sink not into despair. Virtue is near thee, and with gentle hand would now embrace thee. Have over thine head. Fain would the heaven-born soul with her converse, then seek, then court her for her promising bliss. Auspicious queen, thine heavenly pinions spread, and lead celestial chastity along. Lo, now her sacred retinue descends, arrayed in glory from the orbs above. Attend me, virtual through my youthful years. O leave me not to the false joys of time, but guide my steps to endless life and bliss. Greatness or goodness, say what shall I call thee, to give an higher appellation still. Teach me a better strain, a noble lay, O thou enthroned with cherubs in the realms of day. Sorry for the last reading. Thank you so much. It's a very an old English, so I'm sorry.
Well, actually, I'd like to say that, if I was reading the poem and you heard it in American English, that's not even close to what the original accent would have been. She would have had something of an African accent, and then the English spoken in her era in the colonies would have been European English. So, frankly, we're hearing closer to her accent. I probably should have gotten Secretary Bassett's permission to say that before I said it, because we have a letter of greeting that our executive director, Ramona Antoine, is going to read to us. You maybe know who she is. She runs things around here, very gifted. And I notice a slight Jamaican bias in the composition of the room. It's because she's from Jamaica. Would you please welcome Ramona Antoine?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I have spoken to many of you over the last 8 months or 9 months, and I know that many of you are on my calendar to have one-on-ones. I look forward to having coffee or lunch with everyone here in this room so that we could really find out what your needs are at your various embassies and how we at 2230, A House for the Nations can partner with you. Our goal here is to see you thrive in your various professions and also in your personal lives. So please don't take it lightly that we're offering our partnership that is sincere and from our heart. So thank you for being here, and we hope you're enjoying the reading so far. So the Congressional Black Caucus wanted to be here today and unfortunately have a very heavy legislative week. And so the former chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus sent a remark that she wanted read today. And so I will read that from Representative Barbara Lee. Thank you to Chairman Fuller and all the distinguished speakers and advocates here to celebrate Phyllis Wheatley's book, Poems on Various Subjects, Religious and Moral. I will always support empowering women and members of the African American community, and I stand in solidarity with 2230, A House for the Nations. Phyllis Wheatley accomplished something that no other woman of her status had done. As the first person of African descent, the first American enslaved person, and only the third colonial American woman to have a book published, I am astounded by her vast accomplishments and truly commend you all for coming together to celebrate her. As many of you know, Juneteenth is right around the corner. I couldn't think of a better way to remember and honor the sacrifices of those who came before us than to continue the tradition of sharing the little-known stories of our enslaved ancestors. I congratulate all of you who made this initiative possible and look forward to continuing to work together to fight hate and advance true equality for all. Thank you. And now we are going to have some closing remarks from our chairman, Brett Fuller.
These kind of events are what this organization, 2230, A House for the Nations, is about. But it's not just about us gathering together to hear something together. It's also about leaving a little bit different than when we came in, enriched by history, understanding a little bit more about our legacy. And even if you don't identify with Phyllis, West African captive brought to America because your country might be on the eastern side of Africa or the southern, she was a person who looks a whole lot like us. And she went through some of the things that we've gone through with respect to oppression and overcame them and did not deny her heritage nor her ethnicity as she dealt with the people who were her oppressors. This is a fabulous woman of courage and speaks to us deeply today about the greatness that all of us have on the inside of us that sometimes we neglect, we don't recognize. We look in the mirror and we see the same person we saw at the age of 10. We realize that we progressed at some level, but the insecurities and the inadequacies of our own soul prohibit us from becoming what we should be. And this house is to help you understand how God made you, not just what you have become, but what you are to become. Everything about my life has been trying to make people better. I pastored a church for 40 years, handed it over to the second generation, and they're doing a fabulous job. We've got 6 other congregations other than the one I helped to start in the city, and we planted another 8 or so, I can't remember now, outside. I resigned my position primarily to help do this. They, meaning the second generation, could do what I was doing. They could preach, they could lead, they could administrate, they could further our vision and mission, but I don't know that they could reach you. In fact, I don't think any of y'all ever been to my church. No. My point is you came to this. And so I'm trying to figure out how to reach you, how to reach the leaders of the world with truth that allow you to become better. And I don't think there's any leader out there worth his or her salt that doesn't believe they can't become better, and indeed should become better. And I specialize, may not be the best, but I'm here I specialize in trying to figure out how to make people better than what they are, tapping into the image of God on the inside of them that allows them to upgrade beyond just education and experience, something of a sense of destiny and purpose. We also will do, and have done marriage seminars. If you have some issues with respect to your marriage, you want to learn how to be a better husband, better wife, you want to learn how to be a better single, a better friend, you want to learn how to be a better parent. My wife and I, Cynthia, we've parented 7. And although we're not experts, we are experienced. We understand all of the pitfalls, and we adopt it. So we know what it's like to bring somebody who does not have our DNA nor our ethnic heritage into our house. And every once in a while, looking at her when she would do something that none of us understood, like this, and loving her through all of it. She's now 30. She'll be 30 in December. Brought her home from the hospital as a child, baby, birthed. So we're the only parents she's known and experienced. She understands her birth parents, her birth mother and father. But she grew up, and she's white. She grew up in a black house, and she thinks she's black. She identifies with all of our struggle, every bit of it. You ought to see her on social media. Don't. But my point is that everything about what we do here is to make you become better at what you do wherever you are. And so these events will be repeated. We're going to do probably one more of these because it's the 250th anniversary of Phyllis Wheatley's writing. But there will be other complementary events. We did this one in June because it's Juneteenth. That happens on Monday. I hope you all know what Juneteenth is. It's the moment when we believe the last enslaved person in Texas heard that they were free. And it's celebrated. The Emancipation Proclamation happened in January of 1863. Juneteenth happens sometime around June, and they don't know what date. That's why they call it Juneteenth. June of 1865. That's a 2-year gap. Well, there's some reason it was 2 years. The Civil War was still going on, and the places at which slavery was being practiced were the enemy for the North. So they didn't care what Abraham Lincoln said in the South. What he said in the North, they cared about in the South, had nothing to do with whatever he did. So they kept doing what they were doing, even though he made a proclamation in the North. It wasn't until the war ended on April 9th, 1865, where they said, okay, I guess we got to listen now because we lost. So the literal date, where it really was now something that could be accomplished, where every slave could be free, was April 9th, 1865 to Juneteenth, whenever that was. About a 2-month period where soldiers from the North were commissioned to go throughout the South and let everybody in the South know that their slaves were now free. We celebrate that. And some of my ancestors, some of my wife's ancestors, had a really great rejoicing on that day. And so this is why we decided to do it in this month. We did it, a Phyllis Wheatley reading in February, and we may conduct another one. But we are very grateful for your attendance, and our hope is that you heard something today that helps you understand who she was a little bit more, and you received something in this house regarding our explanation of what we do that allows you to see that we are servants to your good. That's all we want, is you to become better. And we will provide atmospheres and events for that to happen. Thank you very much for your attendance.
We're going to have just a few minutes for questions before we enjoy some food and some visiting. And I'd like to ask the first question. You're squirming because you know what's coming. Brett and I have known each other a long time. Obviously, Phyllis Wheatley. By the way, I'm thrilled that he identified his white child as a female, because often because of the way I behave, they will say, am I the white child of the Fullers, even though I'm older than both of them. So that tells you how immature I can behave. Phyllis Wheatley writes a poem in which she is speaking of her capture in Africa as mercy and seeing some purpose of Christ in it. You're a theologian. I'm about to hit you hard with this. What bothers me is that on one part of my family line, in the past, I have Klan ancestors. They would have said the same thing. That's exactly their justification. So help me unpack this. I revere this woman. My doctorate's in literature, so Phyllis Wheatley figures huge in my life. At the same time, this theological issue has been used against those of us who care about racial justice. Help me, theologian.
I don't know that there's much. I don't know how much help I can give except to say this, that the motivation behind the Klan was very different than whatever Phyllis articulated. The Klan was trying to figure out how in the world they could subject people to their authority because they did us a favor by bringing us, their ancestors, bringing us to America. And that is not the motivation behind Phyllis's exhortation. Hers was much more like Joseph. I don't know if you are students of the Bible or even read the story, but Joseph happens in the book of Genesis, chapters 37 through about 45. And Joseph was the favored son of his daddy, Jacob. His brothers hated him because he was the favored son. As a result of being favored, they were envious and they tried to kill him. Instead of killing him, they tried to make a profit on him, sold him into slavery. Wound up in Egypt, going the wrong direction from his destiny because he had a dream that he was supposed to be the guy who would serve all of his brothers as their leader. And as a 17-year-old would, when he had this dream, whereby his brothers came and bowed down to him, he went and told them. Not the smartest thing to do. He was the youngest. The eldest brothers were saying, "Are you kidding me? We're going to serve you? Ain't ever happening, bruh." And then his daddy went out and bought him a really nice coat, multicolored coat, had it made, very hard to do back then, to separate colors. Most things were monochromatic. When you make a multicolored coat, you have spent a lot of money. Today, it would be analogous to a mink. Gave it to him, didn't give it to the other 11. Not a good idea to love one child more than the other. To love them all differently, yes. Great idea. Love should never come off the rack. It ought to be tailor-made. You ought to figure out how to love all of your children differently, but none of them one more than the other. Jacob didn't do that. As a result, it made his brothers, Joseph's brothers, very angry. But he still had this dream that he was supposed to be in charge. Went through some things while in Egypt, wound up being the prime minister. Nobody was over him except Pharaoh, who was the king. And for the most part, he had the largest kingdom in all of the known world at that time. There was a famine in the land. His brothers came looking for food. And to whom did they have to ask and bow? Joseph. That's the motivation behind Phyllis's understanding of mercy brought me here. While Joseph was trying to reconcile, how in the world, I hate my brothers for what they did. It was horrible. Yet I'm in this spot. I'm in charge of all the resources of the known world. I don't like what happened, but I realized that God was in the middle of it. He allowed me to go through difficulty in order to supply for others who did not have. That's what I believe was the motivation behind Phyllis's statement. I apply no redemptive benefit to anything the Ku Klux Klan has to say. Nothing. Though they might use the same words, it is not the same meaning.
Just a few more questions before we enjoy some food and visiting. Other questions or comments? Maybe some questions for the panel? If not, I'll ask another one, but I'd love for you to be the one to ask it. Okay, sure, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. If there aren't any more questions, we'll do that. Are there other questions or comments you'd like to make? Okay, let's do this. All the way in the back to the left, can you tell us what country you are from? Just if you could just stand so we can all see you. Can you stand?
Ghana.
Wonderful.
Ghana.
Tunisia.
Madagascar.
Tanzania. Mauritania.
Wonderful.
Ghana.
Wonderful.
Burkina Faso.
Togo.
Tunisia, sorry. I missed a pairing somehow, forgive me. Okay. Say that again, sir, I'm sorry. Ah, wonderful.
Good afternoon, I'm from South Africa.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon, I'm from the Embassy of Uganda.
Sure.
There may be a dispute in West Africa as to where Phyllis Wheatley hails from. Dispute. And I'm glad that people are fighting over her identity. That's really good. But Gambia says that they have doves on her.
Says she came from there. Now, Ghana, I'm not quite sure, maybe. Togo, maybe. But they say they have rights.
Clearly, that's why we seated you on opposite sides of the room. Sir?
You on behalf of the mayor's office, originally from Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm in the process of trying to discover my African roots. Gabon.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Definitely, I'm from the Republic of Congo. I have to say that because there are two Congolese sometimes. Yeah.
Aha. Madame? Wonderful.
Good afternoon. I am from the oldest country in Africa. Ghana will argue that. We have been independent since 1847. I'm from Liberia.
Sir, I love the pride, but why did you check your watch before you stood? We're only the oldest by 5 minutes, or what's the... Sir, please.
Well, I'm the tiebreaker, I guess. East Africa, Eritrea.
There we go. And again, sir, if you don't mind.
I'm from Zambia.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
I'm from Mali.
Mali.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You maybe heard from Kanku Musa, the richest man. Yes.
Okay, hold the bragging until we get to the food, okay? You honor us by being here. We are grateful. And obviously, we have asked many of you to come because to honor someone like Phyllis Wheatley, the first African poetess in American history, first published in American history, people questioning even if she had the intelligence to do it, and yet her poems survive. And I love that we are having an argument over who claims her. I love that, because that wasn't always the case. That wasn't always the case. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking a few moments to be part of this. Please stay and enjoy some of our food. And Jan, do you have something else you'd like?
I'm a photo person.
Okay.
I love to get people together.
Sure.
I'm thinking just of getting everybody to do a photo at the end. I don't know if somebody can come up or how do we do it?
We'll have one with the girls first, and then we'll have one with everyone.
Oh,
Ramona, why don't you come up here and conduct this, and I'll get my carcass out of the way here.
this is United Nations.
Yeah.
As we are dismissing, again, thank you very much for coming. And look to your emails because we'll be doing more things. But one thing I want to do is thank Stephen Mansfield. Stephen is a prolific author, written 29 books, and some of them on our African-American heroes. Booker T. Washington. He has written on the faith of the Pope. Which Pope? John? Benedict XVI. Many environments in which he speaks, both left on the political scale and right on the political scale. He is invited to all because he speaks truth and they want to hear what he's got to say. He's been my friend for 25 years. And he serves here on this board in order to see our objectives accomplished in Washington, D.C., to make D.C. better. The way you get the city better is you have better people. The way you get better people is to make them better leaders. And he's helping with that, so I appreciate that. And secondly, I want to thank Jan Duplain. You're amazing. She helps to coordinate all the stuff we want to have happen, and we love what she does. And then there's Ramona, who is our executive director, who works very, very hard on the details of what needs to happen here, as well as Sarah, who is working on all of the hospitality back there. She's my executive assistant, and all these people have worked very hard to make this thing happen. Ramona, please come.
All right, thank you again. So if we can get just a few pictures, if we can have the panelists maybe get together, and Carlos will take a couple of pictures of you all. Thank you for speaking. And then if everyone in the room, just hang on, let we get a few pictures of panelists, and then please join us so that we can get a big group picture. Jan has requested that, so. And then we'll go downstairs and there's more coffee and juice and tea and pastries and fruit for us. Phyllis Wheatley's, one of the original publication is right behind us in a enclosed case. So please don't leave without taking a look at that. And then we have a few books for a cash or check donation if you want to leave with your own copy as well. Thank you.